What's your equivalent to Liam Kennedy? Here we go.
Howe!
Geordie Journo's back at the Brandlin again. It's becoming our second home, isn't it, really?
I love it here. They'll be sick of the sight. We're here all the time. Good promo for a great pub, though.
Yes, very much so. I think we would have maybe done it outside. We could have even went in the beer garden, but a bit windy.
Yeah,
so
today. We did have plans on doing this outside, but the Geordie weather paid for the Geordie Journos.
Yes, so everyone liked our video, who commented anyway, the other day, talking about transfers, where we went in depth on who we think Newcastle, or who would like Newcastle to sign, who we think Newcastle should keep, sell, and we just maybe want to expand on the transfers and transfers that could actually happen.
Yes.
In this video, because you've got a bit of information on what could happen. We've spoken about James Trafford previously, mentioned Joao Pedro previously, a couple others, Anthony Elanga's obviously a big one, so just let's get the lay of the land, Liam. What's going on?
Also, I think it's probably not going to be groundbreaking to anybody, but it sounds to me like a couple are heading in the right direction. I think I would suggest, trying to be careful how I say this, I would suggest the Trafford stuff this week could be a part of something else bigger. That's been too vague.
It's cryptic.
It's cryptic, and I'm not trying to be. I think, right, my opinion, this is only my opinion.
Okay.
So my opinion on this is, I think that is a bit of a tactic.
Right.
I wouldn't rule it out. I think don't rule Newcastle United out of the Trafford race, is what I would say. And I could see that one. I could still definitely see that one happening from conversations that I've had. I won't say any more. And I think the Pedro one's going in the right direction as well.
Yes.
Which is a really positive thing, which we wanted to talk about as well. You're not so positive.
Yeah, well, I suppose we spoke about it the other day, didn't we, where you're very much Joao Pedro get that deal done, almost whatever the cost, and I have my reservations on him.
A couple of other ones. What other things I've heard in the last few days? Grealish one was absolute rubbish, but I think that got rubbished by a few people anyway.
Yes.
The Calvert-Lewin one, I've literally never heard him talked about by anybody, speaking to anybody who knows anything. So that might allay a few fears as well, because I know you guys.
People turned off when Jordan mentioned it.
And that was just a bit of fun, by the way. But I haven't really heard him in any notable conversations. Much like what I'd said about the Spanish goalkeeper, which the information was absolutely spot on. Who else is there? Elanga. So no, I haven't had any information on Elanga, so I can't really add anything to the conversation or talk about any deal in that respect progressing. Me personally, the way I look at the transfers, if you go and get Pedro for 60 plus, it's going to be 60 plus. It's not going to be less. It's going to cost more than that. If you go and get him, I can't see how you go and get Elanga for similar money and still work out how you're going to balance the books. I just don't see where that comes about. And then if you have to go and pay 35 plus for Trafford as well, it becomes the biggest summer in Newcastle United's history, probably.
Yeah. Taking inspiration from your dream summer the other day in our last video.
Paul Mitchell. No, so he's going to need a holiday after this month, I think, after the conversation. Sounds like he's having. No, I can't really take the Elanga one any further, but yeah, I think it's a watch this space with Pedro and Trafford. Not to really set a hair away, but just to add to that, what other people are saying is that the conversations I've had, it sounds like those are decent and heading in the right direction, which they need them to. It would settle a lot of nerves. I think just getting somebody through the door would settle a lot of nerves.
Well, it's the way Newcastle was speaking. Eddie Howe said less than a month ago, going to be a big summer, doubled down on it, and said he wants to get business done quickly. Yeah. When you come out and say that, Bruno said the same thing, and then if you're going into pre-season, Newcastle pre-season starts second week of July, I think, and you don't have a new face through the door, that's
do they not always do that though, Dom? Does every manager's dream is to get the players in
business
the first,
done quickly?
Yes. And I'm not.
Eddie Howe's very guarded on transfers. That's all I'd say.
Yes.
For him to speak openly and go, big summer, get business done quickly, he'd usually go, let's see how things play out.
I remember speaking to you guys immediately after that press conference. You two were there, and I think I might have rang you or spoke to you. It might be in a group or whatever on WhatsApp. and I hadn't taken it quite as literally. I watched the press conference myself, obviously with experience of being in these press conferences and dealing with Eddie Howe and plenty of other managers down the years. And I maybe didn't take it as literally as a lot of people did take it literally. Now, that was just my take. I didn't see it any different to him basically saying they need their business done early. I've heard it many a time before from many other managers, and I didn't feel he was that strong. I didn't feel it was strong enough for the narrative to be driven in that direction, which it was by the national newspapers the morning after. I didn't think it was that strong, but you're more clued into the nuance of Eddie Howe. You deal with him a lot more than I do. Sort of in front of the camera, you see how his mannerisms in a press conference, and you did think differently at the time.
Well, it's more the culmination of multiple press conferences. It's comments here and there, what you hear him say. So him saying that, having previously said things of a similar ilk beforehand, it's things sort of gather momentum, and Eddie Howe's words gather momentum, and him saying it 2-3 press conferences in quick succession just build, and that's where the narrative builds from. It's not a throwaway comment from Eddie Howe. It's his belief, you'd like to think, based on what he's saying.
It is still early as well.
Yeah,
So Eddie Howe talking early, I think early to me, in my head, I think I said this to you guys weeks ago, early to me is if they haven't done anything by the first week of July, then it's you start to really ask questions.
That's what I mean. When the players are coming back for pre-season, or when you're preparing for, say, that Celtic game.
If they haven't got in by Celtic, then I think that will drive the narrative of that first press conference he does, which probably will be after the game against Celtic. I don't think they'll do it. Will they do a pre?
They haven't previously.
Yes, I didn't think they'd do a pre. It will literally be us crowding him at Celtic Park on the pitch side, literally going, what the hell is going on, Eddie? And he will be like, wondering the same thing, I would imagine. There was a little bit of that at Rangers, wasn't it?
Yeah, because it was Alan St. Maximin. What's happening? He was like, he might be good.
He's basically like, well, we're going to have to get rid of him if we want to sign anybody.
Yeah. What I will say is Eddie Howe is very different in a media sort of written press huddle than he is in a press conference on camera. He gives a lot more away, and like you say, the nuances, and you spoke about it last summer in Germany, where you had an off-camera sit-down with Eddie Howe, and people almost was like, oh, that's not what he was like, having seen the camera interview, but camera, off-camera, different. Like we all are.
Exactly,
you and me downstairs are having different conversations to what we're having. Well, actually, most of the time we're probably not.
I don't know. Well, the thing is, Dom, when we first started this channel, we did talk about, it'd be amazing to just record what we say. I don't think most of that could go out. I think we'd have been cancelled by now.
Definitely, yes.
As most people are, things that stay in private should stay in private. Yeah. Not too bad, is it?
No, not at all.
No, but some interesting takes on football, as I would imagine.
Yeah.
Right, where we're going, we wanted to talk about the one that I think is a potential game changer.
Well, it's the one that's, I say, driving the narrative at the moment, really. There's the Langa deal, but then also Joao Pedro, who has been linked previously. He came very close to signing for Newcastle back in 2022. They ended up moving for Alexander Isak instead, but that deal was lined up.
Can I interrupt you there?
Yes.
I do it very often, sorry. But I want to interrupt you because I want to talk about a certain narrative that's been driven around that Pedro thing. And I think there's a narrative being driven around the Trafford thing as well. I see it on social media. They're like, club's bloody stupid. They had those players. Why the hell didn't they just do those deals? They couldn't do those deals. One of them they couldn't do because of the PSR swindle of Lacademos. That was Trafford. And actually they did still keep in conversations. It was never going to be possible. Then the narrative that seems to build about Joao Pedro is like, because I think he's a bit of a tit, to be honest. Can I say that? Look, I think he's a bit of a knacker. I don't think there's any getting away from that. Fabrizio Romano takes so much
Coming for the big dogs now.
I am. I'm not just trying to engage, build up engagements on my channel. This is my genuine opinion. You'll always get honest from me. You'll always get honest from Dom. He's a bit of a knacker. We can't get away from that. And his practices are a bit odd as well. But he took a lot of stick for the here we go on Joao Pedro 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now, his information was right. It wasn't wrong. It was as close to a here we go as you could possibly get. Maybe he's jumped the gun by an hour or two.
What's your equivalent of Liam Kennedy, here we go?
Howe! Should we start doing that?
That's a Liam Kennedy Howe.
Howe! Instead of here we go. That's good, that, Dom. I think we should start that.
Right.
So it was as close to a Howe as you could possibly get, right? And it was the narrative about Eddie Howe. And look, information. It's been information kicking around for a long time about Eddie Howe only buys British. Eddie Howe only does this. Eddie only does that. And it's a one that even we might have, added fuel to at times, just looking at it for the basics. But having a lot of conversations about that, because it does intrigue us, and with the Paul Mitchell thing happening, it intrigued us even more to think, is this going to be a total switch away from what we kind of thought it might be to back to Eddie Howe economics? And look, it maybe is a bit, but it was Eddie Howe who really pushed to get to end the Pedro deal and turn all their attentions to triggering the release clause on Alexander Isak. So it was Eddie Howe who signed Alexander Isak. It wasn't Steve Nixon, as he gets held up in this amazing sort of... fans hold him up as this super scout who does everything. It was Eddie Howe who told them, we get this man. Because Callum Wilson got injured. I can't remember what he did. He got injured and it became apparent he was going to be out for some time. And they didn't think signing Pedro from Watford was going to be high profile enough for him to lead the line of where he wanted Newcastle to go at 21 in the Premier League. It was too much. It was all right with Wilson there. I think that was a flawed policy as well, because if it didn't happen then, it would have happened a month later. But that was the idea behind it, was why they pulled the plug on that and went, no, we go all in for Isak. And it was Eddie Howe who drove that. It didn't come from his nephew, it didn't come from Steve Nixon, it didn't come from Dan Ashworth or Amanda Stavely or whatever, or Murder Gadisi, or all these really odd sort of theories. It was Eddie Howe pushed for that, and it needs to be remembered.
Credit to him.
Yeah, and it was arguably, he's arguably signed one of the greatest players of our football club's history.
Quality-wise,
quality-wise is incredible. There hasn't been many times in my memory, I can't speak for before that, but there hasn't been many times in my memory that Newcastle United have had world-level players. Now that might say something about the standard of world football, I don't know, but I haven't known many times where you can hang your hat and argue the case that a Newcastle United footballer, and I go back the 90s, and there hasn't been many times. Alan Shearer was in that conversation. Not many others were in the conversation to say they are top level, world class. Yeah. Shea Given was a quality goalkeeper.
That's who I thought as
so
well.
Possibly,
he was definitely Premier League class. He would be in the top.
He was top 2 or 3 in the Premier League, which you would argue was up there, probably in the top 10 in the world. You could say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not many times in Alexander Isak is that, and Eddie Howe pushed that, and that's why the Pedro deal didn't happen. It was done. It was a Howe, and then it got knocked by Eddie Howe to go for Isak, and I don't think anybody's complaining. So all this narrative where people go on, they could have had for half the money. Why didn't they do that back then? Because there's always reasons for things. It's such a revisionist idea to look back and go, well, you could have had him for 30 and that's why you didn't do it. Look, they could also have had James Trafford for 20. Yeah. Just over. Could have had him for just over 20. That was, again, a Howe. Romano didn't press the button on that one. But the reason that didn't happen is, look, they could have done it. Well, you know what, we'll just do Trafford anyway. And to tell you what, we'll take a 6-point deduction and we ain't in the Champions League anymore. That's what would have happened. Yeah. They had to do that deal. They had to.
So yeah, Joao Pedro 2022 was a Howe into a How No.
What was it? How No?
But could be a Howe in the weeks to come. You never know. So
I think we're onto something. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is our
brand.
This is our identity.
You're seeing the gears turning in live time. So
should we have a quick word for the sponsor as well? People are still interested, and then we'll talk about what we think, where Joao Pedro's at, and what we actually think he might bring or might not bring in Newcastle United.
So here are our sponsors. Comply IT Limited. Worrying about disposing of your old IT equipment? Don't be. Comply IT handle everything. Secure collection, detailed tracking, and certified data destruction. That's Comply IT Limited. Four Rivers Financial Planning offer holistic financial advice for all stages of life, ensuring your plan remains robust and adaptable in the ever-changing world we live in. So yeah, those are our 2 sponsors, links in the description below. And if you like what we do, please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe for all your Geordie Journals content. We'll be producing videos throughout the summer. So be sure to ring that bell as well for all the content dropped into your inbox on your device. So yeah, Joao Pedro, Liam, we sort of clashed a little bit about him the other day. And I just want to go a little bit more in depth on that, because what do you think about this potential signing for Newcastle United?
I think it's brilliant. I really do. I think he's a really talented boy. I think he's got a hot head. But he's got good character. he's quick enough, he can play across enough positions, he's mobile. He's a type of bloke that I don't see there's a drop-off, but I don't see a significant drop-off. You know, look at the squad now. Newcastle United go to Barcelona on a Wednesday night, Alexander Isak plays. Then they've got, I don't know, it might be, I think someone down, Everton away at 12:15 on the Saturday. Playing Joao Pedro in that central striking role is fine. It's absolutely spot on for those games. You could even be going to Old Trafford or Tottenham or West Ham or wherever. Pedro is fine with Isak on the bench, and they're going to need to do that with their key players. They're not going to be able to play. Look, Bruno's done it, to be fair, but he really tires towards the end of seasons. It's so obvious for Bruno when you get to like March, April, he's literally flagging. They're not going to be able to continue to do that with Bruno and Tonali. Tonali would play every minute possible. Doesn't seem to pick up injuries, touch wood. And Isak does. So they can't expect him to have to play every single game. I think it's a key position. It's a key position where they need rotation. They have to freshen it up. And that's why I think it's such a big one. But it's not just that he could play different formations. You can play two up front. He's done it before. Go back to his Bournemouth teams. He used to play a bit of two up front, didn't he? When he had
like the Josh King
and Callum Wilson. He used to quite like the two up front. He's hinted at it a few times in press conference where he's thought, can I play Isak and Wilson? You guys
tried it with Liverpool with Gordon and Wilson. It didn't work.
He did. But I think we're seeing little signs that there's more tactical nuance to Eddie Howe's.
Definitely the past season.
Yeah.
I think he's stepped up a level, Eddie Howe.
He has, hasn't he? The five. Look, and that's the question. Until we see these things, it's impossible to know whether he can. And I think it's fair to say that, forget even if they hadn't won anything, hadn't got the Champions League, it's absolutely fair to say that he'd found almost different tools. Like that five at the back against certain teams works, doesn't work in others. I think he's probably learned that from the back end of the season, Everton. You kind of play that in games like that. But no, I think Howe's been can almost utilise Pedro in different ways. He could play the 4-2-3-1 if you really wanted to. Pedro will play off as a second striker, which is probably his strongest position. He can play off the left. They're probably not going to need him to do that. But that would be another reasonably natural position where he could slot in. But you just ask Brighton, they really miss him when he doesn't play. And now I know there's negatives about his game. I get it. But I see a player at 23. He's part of the Brazilian camp. The two Brazilian boys can get their arm around him, look after him, guide him in the right direction. Good church-going family men, the pair of them. Look after Joao Pedro, and I think we could have a potential star on my hands. I really, really like that signing. Doesn't fill the right-hand side, though.
No, and that's my problem. I think £60 million, which is the fee in the region we're talking, is a lot for a player who doesn't improve your starting 11, which Newcastle need to do. They haven't improved the starting 11. Basically, since the signing of Sandro Tonali, and even then, they spent over a year to actually really feel that impact. I think £60 million to basically threaten to break Newcastle's record signing in Alexander Isak, to get around that figure, you need to be signing some proven world-class talent, in my opinion, and really improving the starting lineup. I don't think Joao Pedro does that. I like him as a player. I think he's got a high ceiling, high technical ability. He has a bit of versatility, like you say. He can lead the line as a number 9, he can play as a number 10, he can even play off the left. But you look at his stats, I think his stats are cloaked slightly. Like, you can go, he scored 30 goals in 70 games for Brighton. A lot were in the Europa League against minnows, a lot were penalties. He has 30 goals, 15 penalties. 50% of his goals for Brighton are penalties. You put Fabian Schär in that Brighton side on penalties, he gets double figures both seasons, Joao Pedro. So I just think his goal scoring record is not as good as people maybe make it out to be. And you look, his one goal in 2025 against Southampton from open play. The rest have been penalties. You have to go back to November since his last goal against a Premier League side, which was Bournemouth, from open play.
The only caveat slightly I would say to that is Brighton were absolute trash at the back end of the season. They really were.
They were fighting for Europe and didn't use him the final 2 games after he returned from suspension, which is another issue I have. You spoke about attitude. He's got a red card in him, and you're looking at him to be the dependable backup to Alexander Isak. There's no use if he's getting suspended. He had a red card, and that elbow, which he didn't get punished for, is the most obvious red card I've ever seen a player not get punished for.
I think if I was to try and find a compromise between our two standpoints, it would probably come in the valuation.
I think so. I think
we
we
both think he's a
agree.
good player, but I think the problem comes with spending that kind of money on that kind of player. And even I would agree he's overpriced. But I would say, I think if you're going to sign players who at football clubs who are decent and don't need to sell, Brighton are the team who needs to sell the least.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to get players out of them and not spend the kind of money that you're going to have to get an Alanga or get a Joao Pedro.
Yeah, I think valuation-wise, you're probably going to have to pay, in my opinion, maybe 20 million more than what he's possibly worth. I think he's probably arrived at 40, 45 mark. Because of his ceiling, because of what he's offered, Brighton are open to selling him as well by the sounds of it. Which would get alarm bells ringing. It's what you say, your amber flag. And you add a few things together. His scoring record isn't quite as good as it's possibly made out to be. Maybe a bit attitude problem as well. I think all that combined, that's not a £60 million player in my opinion.
If Eddie wants him, I want him. That's kind of my stance.
Eddie Howe loyal.
You know what? I've had this argument with plenty of people in recent weeks. And it's fair to question and have doubt. But I think the bloke's, he's virtually got a free rein this window for me. And that's coming from somebody who has been hypercritical of some of his business that they've done in the past. And rightly so, by the way. I think this one, he's earned his stripes and he can crack on. Look, if he goes and then tries to spend 80 odd million on Semenyo or Alanga or something like that, then I will be raising alarm bells. I think Pedro, I think you pay a lot for a centre forward who can score goals. And look, he hasn't always scored goals. But I don't think it wouldn't stop me. And I can see why I would go. I would have been worried if they'd done the same for Gay last year. If they'd gone and signed a centre-half who I think makes them a better team, no doubt about it, but wouldn't potentially be transformative. I think signing Pedro for 60, almost you could probably add more value to Alexander Isak in the process, because it just takes the weight and the burden off him. And it's those unseen things that I think, if it's not Pedro, it could be another striker, as long as it was decent. But I do quite like Pedro as a player. I also agree. I think you're probably paying 20 million premium, which, that'll be part of the process. Are they going to be able to negotiate them down because they know Brighton are wanting to sell him because of the issues that he supposedly had at the back end of last season?
I think if you can organise some sort of payment structure, say you go 40 million, and then if he makes the Brazil World Cup squad, for example, which he'll be very keen to be involved in, that's another 10. Things like that. If you can organise something like that, because to get in the Brazil squad, you're going to have a very good season.
Was he in the last one?
No,
I don't think he was.
He's only made 3 caps for Brazil. He's not really a Brazil.
No, he's on the fringe, isn't
He's made appearances, but the mess they've been in, quite a lot of players have appeared for Brazil.
Yeah, they're not very good, are they?
No. So, I think you're paying a bit too much for a player who doesn't improve your starting 11, and there's one area of the squad that is needed improving for years. If you're going to spend premium money, spend it on the right wing.
Yeah,
that's my stance.
That's a fair argument as well, because if there is a position that haven't signed anybody at all, it's right wing, isn't it?
We're relying on Jacob Murphy, as good as he is, and as good as he was last season. He's 30 years old, and also there's no natural competition. He needs, at the very least, natural competition.
But he's not going to be able to play. He's not going to be able to play every midweek.
He was one of them who took its toll, the Champions League games. He got injured twice, didn't he?
Howe does quite often turn to him, and it's not because he wants to particularly change that. He knows he can't keep playing him. And there has to be some kind of trade-off and competition. They have to be able to bring different players in.
But they've lost Almiron, who was the sort of alternative.
Sub.
Yeah, so they need a massive upgrade on what Miguel Almiron was, and hopefully an upgrade on Jacob Murphy, which I think Alanga is.
He is.
But I'd like to think for 60 million, Newcastle could be thinking a little bit more ambitious, turn into the continent.
You've said it before, and you're right. They can be a bit cleverer in the market away from. We just
don't have the answers, really.
I can't scout them for them. You can't. They just don't seem willing to go down that route. Is that the manager? Possibly. But I think he's earned his right to sign who he wants this summer. For me,
you're Eddie Howe. I'm a little bit Paul Mitchell today. That's what it is. So you want to wrap things up there? Nice bit of weekend content for you while Sam Pender's playing at St James's Park. So St James's Park is a bit busy this weekend.
Yeah.
But we'll be back surely next week to do another video. Hopefully a bit of transfer updates. The window opens again next week after the initial Club World Cup period. So yeah, if you like what we do, please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell for all your latest Geordie Journals content, and comment below what your thoughts. Are you on my side? Do you think Joao Pedro too much money, maybe something to steer clear from, or are you more of a Liam Kennedy camp and you want to Howe Joao Pedro? I hope that catches on.
It will.
Right, we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.